United States and Russia both have air bases in Kyrgyzstan. Last year, ousted President Bakiyev secured $2 billion in assistance from Russia, saying he would close the U.S. base. It supplies NATO troops in Afghanistan. But Moscow resents the U.S. presence in a former Soviet republic. Mr. Bakiyev offended Russia when he renegotiated the base agreement with Washington, raising the annual rent from $17.4 to $60 million. Some Kyrgyz accuse the United States of turning a blind eye to alleged abuses by the Bakiyev regime in exchange for use of the base. The deputy head of Kyrgyzstan's interim government, Almazbek Atambayev, says unlike the United States, Russia did not preach democracy.
They shouted all the time about democracy while the U.S. ambassador artfully covered abuses by the Bakiyev family. We were killed or imprisoned for the sake of that base. A great nation should not behave that way. I think American leaders will understand that.
Atambayev spoke after returning from Moscow, which was first to recognize the interim government. He said that Russia has promised at least $150 million of aid to Kyrgyzstan. Independent political analyst Tamerlan Ibragimov says Kyrgyz civic activists prefer America's open democracy to Russia's authoritarian political model. But he recognizes Kyrgyz people depend more on Russia for their economic well-being.
Many Kyrgyz citizens make a living in Russia, and their cash remittances to families in Kyrgyzstan play a very large role. They practically support their families from Russia. Villages and cities live on that money.
Meanwhile, Kyrgyz markets are filled with goods from China, which shares an 858-kilometer border with Kyrgyzstan. During the Kyrgyz revolt, China warned its citizens to be careful when traveling to Kyrgyzstan and expressed hope for a peaceful resolution. But Kyrgyz State University professor Murat Suyimbayev says China's primary concern is stability in its Xinjiang province, where an ethnic Muslim minority, the Uyghurs, are struggling for independence.
Instability in Kyrgyzstan will directly or indirectly cause instability in Xinjiang, if only because it's easier for Uyghur separatists to act when there is unrest in Kyrgyzstan.
Tamerlan Ibragimov traces cross-border instability further across Central Asia.
This is a rather unstable region. Afghanistan is located here, and if you look a bit farther, there is Iran. The situation in Uzbekistan is also fairly unstable. And if you consider that the Xinjiang autonomous region was always a headache for China, then Beijing probably looks at our country through that prism.
The Kyrgyz revolt was triggered by a sudden doubling of electricity rates. But it highlighted known threats in Afghanistan that could sweep across the borders of Central Asia: terrorism, illicit drugs, and religious extremism. Ibragimov and Suyimbayev note that Chinese, Russian, and U.S. interests in preventing such problems seem to intersect in Kyrgyzstan. Peter Fedynsky, VOA News, Bishkek.